Friends, I am back. This is Blagica Bottigliero with another chat with current doers and makers in the Midwest. And I am really excited on this snowy, blistering Metro Detroit day to introduce you to Tim Moore. Tim Moore is a serial founder. He is a mentor. He is an advisor. He has amazing global experience. And Tim, I also, I think when I met you and got to know you, you're kind of, I'll just say endearingly, a fellow nerd.
Yes.
And I don't know how we met in person IRL. Tim and I met IRL at the Midwest House Summit out in Grand Rapids. Shout out
Yes.
to our awesome friends at Midwest House. Guys, Tim, because I've seen things you've written online. I've seen your POV on startup entrepreneurship, and you have so much experience. You have seen so much. And what really set me back about Tim, and he'll tell you for himself, but your global experience, especially in the Latin American markets. I would love for you to give the folks watching and listening kind of a high level overview of the earlier, days of Tim and what led you to here, because you to me are such a key example of experiences layering like a cake to what you're doing today. It's pretty fabulous.
Well, I really appreciate that. Blagitza, thank you so much for having me on today. I'm very excited to be talking with you about this. I'm excited. I also, like you said, kind of a fellow nerd. I felt we were vibing pretty hard. And I think that we could probably get to a point where people would tell us to shut up and go in another room, but that's okay. And so a little bit about my origin story, right? We'll have to do a prequel to this at some point in a way, but it's pretty straightforward. My father was an early stage serial entrepreneur back in the days before people could spell the word entrepreneur. And I still have to do spell check. I'm not going to lie, but he started this company in our kitchen here in Michigan, designed around the idea that you could do this publishing of a newspaper on this brand new thing called a personal computer. And in doing so, he revolutionized the way that publishing is done. And within about 4 years, we had offices all over the world, in Hong Kong, Australia, Brazil, every place. And so I was brought in at a fairly early age as part of this journey, in some ways kind of a passive observer along for the ride. But around the age of 19, I started actually getting actively involved, especially when you look at doing things down in Latin America, because we do tend to be more transactional in the United States for relationships and business, although it
Yep.
depends on where you are. Of course, the southern states do tend to be more relationship based, in some places in the Midwest too as well. But in Latin America, and specifically Brazil, it's friends and family before business, or at least it was back in the late 80s, early 90s. And so I started going over there and making friends and getting to know the culture and really getting around. And I fell in love with Brazil. So I speak Portuguese. My Spanish is pretty rusty, but I can do it. Italian. I started off learning French, and I actually have what's called registered foreign citizenship in Brazil, which means I get a little card. It's like a social security number that
Wow.
I can go around, and people think I'm Brazilian, which is really helpful. And then in that company, we sold that company back in 99. There were a lot of other roll-ups and exits and other things, to digital asset management, anything to do with publishing, media, newspapers. We were very actively involved. And then we sold that company in 99 in the first internet boom, when it was raining money on everybody. So that was nice. And then we exited there fairly strongly, and then took a little bit of a break and looked around to see what was next. And then we saw that there was this really cool thing, this product called Skype. And so
Okay.
that was the first entrance into what we call voice over internet protocol. As you said, geeky stuff, VoIP,
I love it.
little acronym
Oh, I
there.
love it.
Yep. And so we started buying telephone companies in Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Ecuador. And then I started going down there more frequently and helping run these different locations as we converted them from standard analog telephone system, what they call POTS, Plano telephone system, POTS, to digital telephone systems. And we converted a lot of them over, started trading minutes on the open exchange, and then funded what we built with Telefonica and the largest Latin American ISP known as Terra Networks. We built a great product called Terra VoIP that was a soft phone dialer, very similar to the Skype version, except in this case, it was all in Portuguese and accepted Portuguese currency, boletos, and other forms of payment that are unknown in other areas. So that company became very successful because telecom costs are very high. We had a 500,000 paying subscribers, B2C relationship, sold that company in part to a $1 billion company back then when $1 billion was a big deal. It was Grabber Seguranças out of Brazil. And then we ran that company together for about 2 years. And then they bought us out because they wanted to go more into heavy infrastructure and tech. We were working with a lot of these other major media companies. One of them is TV Globo out of Brazil, second largest television broadcaster on the globe. And they reached out because they needed help with video for their telenovelas. They were having problems with engagement. And so that was the inception of Clixie AI. I can keep going, but I'll stop and pause and give you a moment here.
I have so many questions. And the first thing that comes to mind, and I say this with Midwest love to fellow Midwesterners watching this. Many of you know I spent a couple decades out in Chicago. And when right before Web 2.0 became like a Web 2.0, I was traveling out to the coast, for meetings and whatever else. And Tim, everything you described to me, your experiencing things that you did seems as if to me, you lived in Palo Alto or you lived by the HP garage that was being constructed. And I say that because it's very rare for me to meet a Midwesterner, a Michigander, who your dad's sitting in the kitchen at the kitchen table and says, what if we put, publishing, on this other thing? That idea or that wondering, I'm not saying folks in Michigan can't think that way, but everything you described to me, your career doesn't seem to fit the Midwest path. And that's why I was so curious, because it's so different and so unique. But I would also argue that there's so many other Midwesterners and Michiganders who have similar types of backgrounds of doing different things in different parts of the world. We just don't know. So first, I'm so glad to have met you in that way. But wait, when you sat with your dad and your dad said, what if we did this digitally? What did people think he was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs? What? Because sometimes some of the best innovators, you believe it yourself and, if you grind, you grind, you grind. What was that like when your father went on that journey to flip the script, if you will, with how things are done? Because it's, this is how it's always been done before.
So my dad is was one of the world's greatest salespeople. He just was. He was an absolute savage when it came to making sales in a good way. I mean, he was very relationship based. He knew how to really work it. And so he sold this concept to newspapers because he understood them and he knew their pain points. So it's like a doctor working with a patient and saying, this is a problem that you have, but this is also a problem that other patients have. If
Yeah.
I help fix this with you, then I can do this with many other people. And so the other thing that was kind of pivotal to this is that he started it in Ann Arbor and using the
Mm,
University of Michigan and leveraging that ecosystem was the tip of the spear for the tech part of this. And then there was some affiliation with the university. Professor Brophy was embedding classes in our company for doing his venture capital and private equity stuff. And so it was unusual perhaps, but if you think about it, I've grown up in Michigan. I mean, I've lived in Florida, Ohio early on, and we always came back to Michigan, but I've always lived here and flown away to do business. That's
right.
the difference between today and yesterday. Is yesterday I lived here and then I went elsewhere, and now I live here and I do a lot of business in Michigan, in
Mm,
Detroit, in Ann Arbor, Traverse City, all the places. It's now we have an amazing ecosystem, second fastest and growing in the world, just behind Dubai. That's a fact. I'm happy to prove it. And and I don't want to be anywhere else. I want to be here. I want to be at Black Tech Saturdays, Michigan Founders Fund, Midwest House. These are amazing organizations. And I feel is I will never have this opportunity again in my lifetime to watch the renaissance and rebirth of one of our major US cities, which is Detroit. And as a follow along, they're bringing up the entire Michigan ecosystem. I mean, New Lab and Michigan Central are just a beacon to the rest of the world that we are here, we are back, and we are stronger than we ever were.
yes. And it's been, even when I was away, I would always keep a side eye in a good way to back home to figure out what was going on. And seeing, as you mentioned, this ecosystem in including our friends up north. We love you, Youpers. And I
Please.
love seeing what's happening up north. I love seeing what's happening in the UP. I love seeing what's happening. You mentioned, I lovingly call it TC, Traverse City.
Of course.
The incubation that's happening up north. Sidebar, I do think it's interesting too. If you follow the news, there was that big lawsuit with the wineries up in Traverse City.
Yes.
And because of that, one of the largest, forgot the name of it offhand, one of the largest law firms that helped with that lawsuit is now opening up an office in Traverse City because they realize there's all this opportunity. And they actually were cited in Cranes saying, hey, for all the tech startups, you're going to see a lot more of us. I think it was Miller Canfield, maybe. Maybe it was Miller
It was
Canfield.
could have been Miller
That
Canfield,
was that
very
was them. It was, yeah, I think it was MC. So let's talk about that. So you're going from Michigan, you're traveling the world, you're going to Latin America, you're getting this global experiences, speaking different languages, being part of this change from a digital tech perspective. You mentioned Skype. I also love that you mentioned the telenovelas because I used to watch them with my girlfriends back in Chicago. And that was another type of innovation. And I'd love to talk about Clixie and what you started there. If you could share what Clixie is, what about the work you did with those other entities, what helped you think about starting Clixie, or what did you learn from those experiences? And once folks know what Clixie is, do you think that Clixie would have been working as well had you not had that previous entrepreneurial founder experience elevating all those other businesses?
Well, Clixie is nowhere near what it looked like when it started. I mean,
Hmm.
that's just the reality of it. And so to be a good founder, you have to be able to pivot. You have to be flexible. You have to know when to stand your ground and when to move out of the way. And I think that that's just, and you also have to build up a fair amount of scar tissue because this shit is not easy. And, it's stressful. You go to bed sometimes, certainly have gone to bed going, how am I going to make payroll in the morning? And if you've never done that before, it can be super stressful and not want you to get out of it. So being involved in this in all, as long as I have, gives me a different perspective on other people. I tend to take a longer view and I tend not to react in the moment. I can say it could be good or could be bad. Let's wait and see. And so the way that Clixie started was that there was a need, as I said, for people to stay on the video. And so someone's watching the video and they like these glasses, which actually your glasses are way better than mine. So let's say we're watching a video and we click on your glasses and then we can pull up something that would allow us to buy that. So that's what TV Global wanted from us was the ability to transact in the video. And by doing so, retention was part of that because that's something that can happen. If we're watching the video, I like your glasses, I open another tab and I click on Google and I do a search. And now you've lost the viewer and you've lost the opportunity to
Yeah.
participate in that revenue transaction. So we did very well in the beginning with this as a click to buy. We had multiple media organizations involved. We had Gisele Bundchen's line, Hope Lingerie, Tom Brady's former wife. And then Brazil went through a currency crisis. Did we shut the business down? No. We pivoted towards education, came back to the US, and then built this and it rebuilt it in a way on the floor at Ross at U of M to do this for education. And then use that to leverage the relationship and the brand of U of M to get Google as a customer. Now, it's funny when I'm talking about, what we do to people, to VCs and other folks, they're like, who are your customers? And I say, Google. They never ask me for anybody else. They stop. Right. But the
Yeah.
reality is that Google is not my best customer. They're my most recognized customer. But I think that for me, it's really a matter of finding out where the revenue is. It's not just about building a good company. It's about building a product or a service that is useful and services some sort of a need. It's fixing a problem that's out in the marketplace. And if you can do that and scale it, then you have a business. Also, there's something that I'm going to go back a little bit towards our origin story. So before my father was my grandmother. This is a Rosie the Riveter congressional gold coin that I received from her when she, as Rosie the Riveters, as a class, received that in Washington, D.C. a couple years ago. So my grandmother was a very pragmatic person, was very close to her growing up, and she taught me a lot of common sense. Do good things. If you want things to be good in your life, put good out there, and it's more likely to come back. And she was always a rock in my life. And it was really cool that she got awarded a lot of recognition later on in her life, but she stayed super humble, never let anything get to her head. They had her in parades and everything. And she was a big role model for me. I mean, about humility and keeping it simple. And that translated to my father and that translates to me.
Did she work? Do you know if she worked at Willow Run?
Twice. She did. She was a Rosie the Riveter twice. She did it at Willow Run. I'm part of the Betty's organization over there that does the air show. And then she also sewed airline pilot parachutes at the American Lingerie factory in Detroit in the early, I don't remember when it was, but yeah, she actually served for 2 wars.
That is amazing, Tim. And that's why starting at the beginning of the chat, when I was scanning your background and having gotten to know you, you do just have this amazing layered sandwich of those experiences. And I really appreciate in regards to Clixie, what you were saying with some mornings we'd wake up, I'm not sure if we'd make payroll. Yeah, you have to change. Okay, Brazil's economy isn't the best right now. We got to change it up. And I'm going to now talk about like as we age, and I'm going to talk about some realities that I'm experiencing and talking to either founders or would-be founders. And that is the notion of where we are in the world today. We're talking about entrepreneurship. We're talking about VCs. We're talking about Michigan. I like to be very real in my conversations about trends and especially helping Gen Xers. There is this feeling, state, region aside, that starting something, being a founder, having an idea is reserved only for a younger generation. Now, I will say before I had children, before I got married, I had more free time, more time to focus, and the responsibility was pretty much me. But even I myself, as I become a mother and careers changed and responsibilities, it has been even trickier to find that time, but even to find the community of folks who understand. And I think I found it now, especially back in Michigan, we have a good lot of it. What are your thoughts about being a founder? Because there are people right now who have a lot of experience in their careers, traditional careers, late 30s, 40s, and so on. And some are maybe adapting to AI, some may not. Or some folks who I talk to have this like little light on saying, okay, maybe this is the time for me to really explore my thing, really explore this utility, this thing I want to build or do. But given the age, the sandwich generation, where we are, what would you say to someone who wants to start something and is seeking that type of support and community? Because the folks that I talk to, just like they'll say, B, I don't know where to start. And so I'll give them links and ideas and
Sure.
community and what have you. I know it's a big question, but what would you say to someone specifically who wants to start something? Because you've got such that layered sandwich experience you can learn from. But so many folks, 40, 45, 50, want to start, but it freaks them the heck out.
I see people starting up companies in their 60s. I mean, why not? Lord Ken Thompson, who started Thomson, it turns into Thomson Reuters, was an absolute miserable failure as a business person until the age of 55, and then bought a boxcar full of radios and then realized that there were no radio stations. So he started one, and that was the beginning of the Thomson media empire. There's never a bad time to start a business. It's just where you are in your life. Can you
Hmm.
handle risk? Do you have something that you can fall back on? Do you have a supportive spouse? Do you have a supportive family? There's a difference between starting a business that you want to go after to get venture capital backing and funding. And so there's Main Street and Wall Street, right? And so a Main Street business can start up at any time and doesn't need to be anything other than a good business that provides a service that gets revenue. I love that. We need
Hmm.
more of those. And that's for people that retire from their corporate job and start a coffee shop or a working farm or something like that. Those are entrepreneurs and those are founders. That is the basis on which we build everything else. And I don't ever want to take away from that because those are good businesses. However, unless you're going to be a business that is going to, when I say Wall Street, where you can scale, where you have an exit strategy, where you have all these other things, that's when you go to look at people that are the potential investors. The problem that I encounter a lot of time with people that are in startups or thinking about startups is I don't want to go out and raise money. Don't. Just don't. Start small, start doing things. And the best way to do that is 90% of this is simply showing up. That's it. Start small. Don't you have to eat the elephant all in one bite. Start going to local community events. There's so many now, especially in Michigan. And that's part of what I do is I connect other entrepreneurs and people, coaching and other things with resources, with coaching resources, accelerator resources, grant resources, funding. Do you want to pitch? Sure, I'll help you. There's pitch competitions everywhere. That's why I think today, one of the things that I'm most proud of, other than obviously getting to where we are today with Clixie, is that I'm also part of the Culture Club for Michigan Founders Fund. And they call me the founder in residence. I am an entrepreneur in residence at the Birmingham Angel Cityside Ventures, which is a venture fund and angel syndicate. So I help advise deal flow. So I can help startups, I can tell them, what are investors looking for? I know I'm listening to the investors. And then I'm also part of the New Enterprise Forum. I am a graduate of their coaching. I also received an award for best business plan from them, which was kind of cool. But one of the things that I think that a lot of people need to look at, especially if you're in Detroit in this area, is Black Tech Saturdays. I'm a big supporter. I'm part of like the inner circle. That's what they say as far as bringing people in and organizations and events. And that is just an amazing place to be because the energy level there, I mean, anything else, I'm sorry to say, is almost like 110. But when you go to Black Tech Saturdays, it's 220. It's hard lit. And so that's where these entrepreneurs and these beginning founders can go and socialize their ideas, talk to other founders and hear, what did you do? How did you approach this? What sort of, did you look for? And then that's where you start seeing them get excited. They're like, wait, I can do this too. These people here, there's all these things. That's how we build. We build together because there is no me stronger than a we.
Let's explore that more. And shout out to Johnny and Alexis from Black Tech Saturdays. They're amazing. There's been a lot, there's always analysis, right? Tim, there's always analysis. And, I love my friends at Tech Nexus back in Chicago, Fred, all those guys. Midwest culture, I love seeing it. And I think that it's good that we're looking at it as a region. But obviously we live in Michigan. We're Michiganders. My nasal isn't as nasally as Gretchen's because her Michigan accent is off the charts. Gretchen, if you ever watch this, I would love to drink a Bell's Oberon with you in the spring. Tim, let's talk about that type of connection. What I mean by that is, first, you mentioned Main Street, which I love, because I think people forget if you have a donut shop, a coffee shop, you are a founder. You are. Because, if like Techtown, for example, I know Techtown does so much support in terms of businesses and restaurants within the area, the Detroit area,
Yep.
because that's also the ecosystem whereby the tech manufacturing mobility founders are buying food or eating lunch, and it's, have that ecosystem. But because whether it's different types of media and press, the regular consumer will hear, so-and-so got XYZ and VC capital. So-and-so started this and they got this investment. I think that's why we hear the hesitancy of when people say to you,
Hmm.
Tim, I don't want to have to raise money. So I think that is something that it'd be cool to kind of crush. And I love what you said earlier about crushing that, where you don't have to. Just come to events, come hang. Talk to me about what you've noticed when you mentioned the Detroit Renaissance, because I've only been back to Mich since 20. And I came back to the east side of the state in 2020, so 5 years, but more deeply getting entrenched the last couple with our ecosystem. What do you think sets apart Michigan and Metro Detroit when it comes to those resources? Because I still think there's a little bit of hesitancy of gatekeeping, or, of course you have to get to know people and interact. But what have you seen with that renaissance and that change of the willingness of people to help each other and be open without it costing somebody something aside from time and maybe registering for an event?
I mean, we do have Midwest nice, and so that is good and bad in some ways. But it is good in the fact that we will go out of our way to help somebody else, and for no reward, just because. And that is a philosophy that seems different from obviously on the West Coast. And so I think that the idea here is to create as many opportunities to support these founders as we can so they can go out and crush it. But crushing it just means having a successful business and a good life. It doesn't have to be exiting at
Yeah.
$200 million plus. It can be drawing an $80,000, $100,000 a year paycheck off of your really nice accounting firm that you service 18 clients a year and you're happy with that. So that both there's resources for both here. To your point, we do have a hard time funding films here. So anything with films is on the other side. But really, one of the fundamental changes in the ecosystem that really altered everything very fundamentally was the exit of Duo Security to
Yep.
Cisco for 2.35 billion, and then also watching Bedrock and Dan Gilbert quietly buy up most of Detroit and then create things like the Gilbert Family Foundation
Hmm.
to support entrepreneurship, Detroit Venture Partners, which is a family office to support entrepreneurship, all those types of things. And that's why we have Black Tech Saturdays and Michigan Founders Fund, is because Doug Song exited and said, let's start Michigan Founders. He didn't start it. It was somebody else. Trista did that, but he was supporting it in the beginning. and then Dan Gilbert. So today we have money here. We
Yep.
never had that before. We had stutter starts and stops because we'd get all excited and then we'd run out of funding. Now there's money here, and this capital is drawing other capital. It is quietly becoming the area where people are investing in hard tech. You don't have to just be like a high tech founder in Michigan. You can build drones. My friend Elliot from Mott, Elliot Smith, has an amazing product where he creates underwater robots and he puts them into water systems to see where there's leaks and other things. We build here and we build big. We may not think big enough compared to the West Coast. Like our founders don't run around and say, we're going to exit for $50 million in 6 months, because we tend to be more conservative and we don't want to put
Mhm.
ourselves out there. Sometimes we need to. We need to have a moonshot. Yes, we can exit for 250 million in 3 years. And here's how we're going to do it. If we miss the mark by 50 million, you still make 200
You know,
million. I
dude,
mean, you know what I'm saying? And so
yeah.
all these things are here for you to grab hold of. I mean, and I want to throw out another shout out to the Burgess Institute for Entrepreneurship and Innovation over at Michigan State University. The folks at Michigan State, in my opinion, like Paul Jack and Ruben Levenshulm and all those folks, they're killing it over there. They're really getting a lot of founders. We've got some of the best startups in Michigan that are coming out of MSU's program. Elliot was one, and then there was also Bryce that does shoelaces that never come untied. They were, they're on Tim Draper's Meet the Drapers. It's $1 million pitch competition with 200 million viewers. That's how we get eyes on Michigan, is having success stories that other people see and then that tracks them to come here.
Love that you mentioned the shoelaces. I heard about the shoelaces. And the other piece of what I wanted to talk with you about is I agree with you. The hard tech is here, robots, drones, manufacturing. I know healthcare. Healthcare is on the rise too. There's a bit of fintech. And I was so stoked when I read the article about Big Sean and Usher,
Yeah.
that creators space together at Michigan Central. Why was I excited? Well, you mentioned it's hard for us to get film funding here, which is annoying. But sidebar, Detroit filmmakers in Tubi are dominating Tubi. If you have not seen Tubi,
What?
you don't watch, oh my gosh, yeah. So Tubi is an amazing, always free ad
Oh, I've
platform.
got it. I just didn't know we were dominating. I love it.
Detroit filmmakers are really, really good in getting in Tubi with different genres too. So check that out. But this goes into like the creative piece and the arts. I also read a piece about someone, I believe it's Dan Gilbert's former partner. She's buying a bunch of space to put like an art community in Detroit. She bought a bunch of buildings. I have to go back and confirm it in Cranes. What I want to talk to you now is about things and startups that aren't hard tech. So you mentioned the shoelaces. And I know about Hillary Doe, our chief growth officer, I know we want to keep more young folks in Michigan proper, the brain drain. I remember when I was in Chicago at the time, the biggest talk of Chicago was when Mark Andreessen, he went to U of I, but he left to go to the West Coast for Netscape. The fellows who started YouTube, they went to U of I in Champaign and they went to the West Coast. So back then as a Chicagoan, that was constant all the time to stop the
Yeah, yeah,
brain
yeah.
drain.
Yeah, yeah.
But there are a lot of young kids here in school, Michigan State, shout out to Western, Eastern, Central. Tim, they want to be founders, but they don't want to work on drones. They don't want to work in manufacturing, and they don't want to do AVs or EVs. What are we doing, in your opinion, in our state to still keep them here and keep them excited to come up with stuff? Because I honestly don't see a lot of excitement and chatter when it comes to investment for things that aren't hard tech. And that's okay. But I think we have to have a level setting conversation with whether or not that even exists or not for
Mhm.
people who want to do something cool that maybe, I'm not saying this is it, but Instagram like, or something that's a lifestyle StockX kind of thing. What
Well,
are your thoughts on that?
I mean, and great point. StockX was created here, right?
Yeah.
And with a
Yeah.
couple good ideas. And so so the old joke used to be that when you graduated from the University of Michigan, along with your diploma came a plane ticket because you were
Yeah.
gone, right? You were out. You
Yeah.
weren't sticking around.
Yeah.
And so that's the way it is, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
come here for education and that's what we were known for, but you make your fortune elsewhere and then you come back when you're ready to raise a family later in life. That's
Mm-hmm.
sort of been our cycle. How do we keep people here is we give them exciting opportunities. I'm looking at the snow right now and I'd love it to be 75 degrees outside, but I can stomach the weather as long as you can handle a little bit of cold.
Long
And there's
johns.
a lot of sorry?
Just put on some long johns,
That's
people.
exactly I mean, hey, I got a
Get some
sweater.
long johns. There you go.
But it's there's more capital coming here than ever before. You don't have to just get a job in hard tech. There's so many different opportunities with some of the most exciting things in AI, robotics, but not just necessarily like hard robotics, but how do you create a software platform that manages a drone swarm?
Mm,
Those are cool. That's hard tech, but that's affiliated hard tech, right?
right.
And so there's all these ancillary opportunities that if you draw a Venn diagram, there's all these little overlaps with these things. In med tech here in Michigan, to your point, thank you for bringing that up. I'm helping somebody right now establish a $50 million health tech fund here for startups specifically that are focused on that. We have tremendous amount of financing for health tech if it's later stage, like if they're doing Series A, Series B raise. Where we're lacking is in the pre-seed and seed, which is the startup money. And so we don't have all the angel investors in the space that we need. So we need more funds. So having a 50 million startup fund is a good start. We need a $500 million
Mm,
venture healthcare fund here to really do something impactful. But again, all signs are pointing towards Michigan's incredible growth. There's no signs pointing to we're slowing down, we're accelerating in a lot of different areas. There's a whole cluster and floor at the Bamboo House in Grand Rapids,
mhm.
next to Midwest, next to Start Garden, that's all AI and high tech based. Cal Morris, my buddy, or sorry, Troy Morris from Cal Morris, my buddy up in the northern part of Michigan, they make rockets and they actually build things to launch into space. I mean, what's more exciting than, satellites and rockets and going to space, right? Every opportunity that you can think of in the state is here. It's just it doesn't have the warmth of a Stanford, but we're starting to get there with the financial backing.
You mentioned, well, specifically about medtech with pre-seed and startup. What are your thoughts on how we're doing right now, regardless of industry in the vertical, but in that startup pre-seed type of funding? What are your thoughts about that and how we're doing? Do you think it's healthy? Do people, another question to flip it is, you mentioned earlier resources and grants. Is it a matter too of would-be founders not knowing what they don't know? Like, are there funds, are there grants to help with a pre-seed type of thing that people may not know about?
Yes.
Or do you think, you know what, B, we could use more? What are your thoughts overall about the early stages?
We can always use more help. I don't think that that's a bad thing. It needs to be the right kind of help. It doesn't necessarily just need to be writing a check and then running away.
Mm,
It like I like the idea of Michigan Founders Fund Pre-Accelerator run by Generator. They're a pre-seed. If you look like you're going to be high growth, if you can do these things, then they're like, okay, here's $15,000, but we're going to give you 6 weeks of coaching along the way.
yep.
Those are the kinds of things that we need as education and how to make a successful founder. And then that's where they establish those relationships that gives them the network that they can fall back on when they actually start growing. I love what we're doing. I think that we're getting better. I still think we suck as far as investing and the amount of money that we need to have. But if you look at a great example of a killer founder just absolutely crushing it in health tech, go look at Lindsay Josephs from Bed Connect. She's won one of the Pitch Michigan $250,000 pitch awards. She got another layer of investment on top of that. She killed it at A2360. I think it was biotech. I don't remember exactly A2360, the event. And our fund has invested in her and a lot of others have as well. So we have folks that we can look to
Mhm.
as lighthouse companies and say, they're doing it. We can do it too.
I, re- I appreciate the candor when you said, you know what, we suck at, we need to get better at more funding and more things. And I think that's so refreshing because going back to being in Michigan, I love how that we're also realists. Yes, I do think, and the stories are true. Like, when I would go out to California, I forgot the name of it. There was a specific pancake house. It was a specific breakfast place that you would go and cut a deal. You would go meet with the VC, you'd have a stack of pancakes, and you'd leave with a check. It's not folklore, it's real.
That's
And
awesome.
we don't have that in Michigan. But what are your thoughts about, okay, so we know we have to get better at funding. Okay. I agree with you. I think the resources we have for the things that exist are pretty awesome sauce. But help me with this piece. I also hear some frustration with chicken and the egg. I've got this great idea. I'll go to an investor and the difference of that conservative ROI in the Midwest and in Michigan compared to the coast. Do you think that's good? Do you think it could be better? Meaning a founder going to an investment group and saying, I got this thing, it's working. There is some kind of ROI ish right now, but I could use more funding. And then the investor saying, well, come back to us when your ROI is this or your CAC goes to this number. What are your thoughts about that conservative type of mindset when it comes to investing in a new concept versus the
We're
coasts?
making the valley of death that much bigger, unfortunately. And if you look over the course of since 2022, which was kind of a banner year as far as investment goes, and it kind of fell
Mhm.
off a cliff after that, and it's been really sad ever since. You really need to lean into your strengths. Before you start looking elsewhere for money, before you start looking at grants and other things, the first thing that everybody should be doing is looking at friends and family. Not everybody has that, and I completely understand that. That's why we say friends and family. If you don't have friends that have a lot of money, maybe you should go make some. But it's the idea that you need somebody that is willing to bet on you. It's
Mm.
the old argument that we used to teach in Brophy's class at U of M. Is who's winning the race? Are you going to bet on the jockey or the horse in this case? Are you going to bet on hold on one second. I'm sorry
No
about
worries.
that. All right. It's do you bet on the jockey or do you bet on the horse? In this case, what do you do? Do you say that founder is a successful founder who has done many things, that they have had multiple exits, that you can bet on them, even though they have a brand new company that has no ROI, that has a little bit of traction, and maybe what I would describe not as an MVP or minimally viable product, but as an MLP, which is a minimally lovable product, get something out there in the audience that they're actually going to enjoy and work with. And then if somebody knows you and believes in you, they will vote with their confidence with a check or with connecting you with somebody that can give you a check. Going to a VC fund when you're early stage like this, unless it's a fund that has some backing from the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, like one of the funds that comes out of MSU Research Foundation or Invest Detroit Ventures, they're not going to look at the founder. They're going to look at the company. To your point, they're going to say, you guys need to come back in a couple years or in a year when you have some traction. Whereas an angel investor, which is an individual of ultra high net worth or high net worth, will say, you know what? Tim, I like your style. I'm going to bet on you. And that's where you get most of your money. It's where I've gotten most of mine.
Again, I love the refreshing, the refreshing POV because sometimes folks will read things, but they're not sure if it's accurate. And it's really great for folks to see this and hear it from someone who's also in the mix of the space, the industry, and different folks from different, POVs. As we wind down, it's 2026. I'm talking about this right now in January. Given what you saw in 2025, I'm not asking you to be Nostradamus, but I kind of am. What excites you about 2026 right now? What excites you for, things that launched 2025 that you were a part of, but now there might be some momentum? I mean, you're such an energetic guy. And by the way, Tim's LinkedIn, I just had it up. What does the beginning of your LinkedIn say? Your LinkedIn says something about your what does it say about your energy? Hold on, I have to find it.
I am an irrepressibly cheerful human being.
That. That's probably why Tim and I get along so well. I mean, Tim, how many folks is I love your energy. Like, do you really? So 2026, what are your thoughts?
This is going to be a transitional and transformational year. We're going to start seeing an acceleration of an AI, and that's going to impact every aspect of our business. There, you can jump into the waters on the debate. Is this an AI bubble or is AI creating something new that is going to be sustainable and be here for, the foreseeable future? People are realizing that AI is a lot more than what we thought it was. And that
Mhm.
is initially, we always do the same things with technology. We rush in and we overestimate its capabilities. Then we realize it can't do everything we want right now. And then we don't look at the long term capabilities and possibilities. So, this is going to be the year of agency. This is going to be the year where people are going to create AI, GPTs and other things that are going to run their businesses in the background. And we as humans are going to have to become accustomed to working with non-human entities. And when I tell that to some people, I get horror as a reaction. It's
Yeah.
not that bad. We've been doing it for years. What is Siri? Siri is that is exactly what this is. Why are we
Thank you.
freaked out?
Thank you. It's just, I mean, I'll ask folks like, I go, "You've heard of machine learning, right?" "Well, yeah." "Well, okay. Well, ML's been around for a while. Now it's just souped up with AI." And I don't wanna let you go until I do want it could be a back and forth detailed topic, but I was pleasantly surprised. Fred, thanks, Fred. Fred Hogue from Nexus sent me an article. It was about Microsoft's kind of like promise regarding data centers. And, Microsoft saying that they, want to pay their share. They don't want to stick it to the consumer. I know that data centers are a bit controversial all over the country. Michigan's had some controversies, challenges, I'd say. I would just want to say I'm really pleasantly surprised that Microsoft is taking that stance to truly be open about what we will need from a data center to power the AI that you're talking about and what they want to do as a responsible company. I am hoping that that continues, and I'm hoping that mindset flows across different AI projects, data center projects.
So Microsoft also bought 3 Mile Island, which is a nuclear facility that was shut down because of a minor reactor meltdown back in the 70s when I actually had moved away from Pennsylvania. I lived right by there, and
Wow.
so I think that part of the being responsible about AI and data centers is that yes, we need the AI to do things, but we don't need it to affect the quality of the humans that are living in that region.
Right.
I'm very encouraged by a lot of the things that I've seen for people building data centers in space. I love that because
Like
that way
data
you
centers in space.
yeah, because that's nuclear. It's away from the human population. You can get the data down there and it's already cold. There's no reason to waste all this water and energy keeping it cold.
Now I need to research data centers in space for the rest of my morning. Tim, it was so great talking with you about all the things today. We covered from this has probably been the most eclectic and amazing chat thus far. Rosie the Riveter and the War. By the way, I love World War II history. We talked about newspapers going to digital. We talked about Latam. We talked about telenovelas. We talked about VoIP. And then we talked about data centers in space and Michigan investment and the up north investment. It's just, Tim, this was fabulous. For those of you who want more info, you need to follow Tim on LinkedIn, but also www.clixy.ai. Check out Birmingham Angels and all the other elements that I will include. Tim, any last words before I let you go?
If anybody does look at Clixy AI, it's a very powerful platform. There are people that are using video for education, for training. I'm always happy to work with somebody, especially starting with a startup at no charge to help them out, to help them get their journey. So for people that are watching this, if they're interested, they can reach out via our contact, and I'm happy to walk them through and help to show them how it's a value. But I just want to say how much I appreciate you. Your energy level is awesome. And I like how we feed off each other. I feel if we went out, for the evening, we'd probably, like I said, have people at tables close to us telling us to quiet and shut up because we'd be having so much fun.
Are you going to South by Southwest?
I'm looking at doing that right now. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out who I'm going to be rooming with.
Yeah, I just got a room just to get a room, but I think I'll be down there.
Nice.
Midwest House, for those of you going, Midwest House does have a deal to join Midwest House and then go to the Midwest House itself in Austin. So a little plug for Ted and crew. Tim, thank you so much. This is badass. And I'll see you on the flip side.
Outstanding. Cheers. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye.
Thanks.